Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Mythos at Home, Sovereign Zero-Day Discovery on Your Terms. I'm Stacy Holleran with ISLE. Before we begin, I want to do a bit of housekeeping. The session is being recorded and the slides will be shared afterwards with all registrants and attendees. The attendees are muted, but we have some panelists here, and we will hold Q&A for the end, but we have reserved plenty of time for Q&A. We expect this webinar to run from 30 to 45 minutes. Ask your questions in the Q&A panel, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end. Today, we were meant to speak with Stanislav Fort. Unfortunately, Stanislav has had a sudden emergency and is unable to join us today. So with us, we have Dr. Evelina Gabasova and Tomasz Dulka. Evelina is our head of technology, and she is an AI researcher who has recently focused on AI and cybersecurity at Gen, and before that worked at the Alan Turing Institute, where she led projects from air traffic control to evaluation of frontier models. Tomasz is also with us. He's a member of our technical staff here at ISLE, and he works on AI agent performance for cybersecurity tasks. Previously, he researched mechanistic interpretability of LLMs and built ML systems for development economics at the World Bank. That's a lot to say, Tomasz. And he holds a master's from MIT in data science and economics. With us as well, you can see Andrei Volchek, our CEO, who has joined us today. Most of you know Andrei as a cybersecurity leader with more than 2 decades of experience. Andrei has served as CEO of Avast and later president of Gen Digital, guiding both companies through major global transformations. He originally joined Avast as a developer and went on to lead its evolution from traditional antivirus to AI-driven security. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn it over to the team to talk to our presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you for the intro, Stacy. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm sure you caught the mythos in the title, and we're all interested in seeing where cybersecurity is now in the mythos era. So just to set the scene, I have some statistics that we pulled out from various recent reports. And AI is changing cybersecurity space very quickly, both on the defender side and on the offense as well. The attack volume has increased by almost 90%, targeting organizations by AI-enabled adversaries. So that's people using AI to perform real attacks. We are seeing it in the wild. It is happening. And 42% of exploited vulnerabilities were weaponized before even public disclosure. So there was some of it happening even before, but now it is increasingly easy to explore a code base, identify a vulnerability, and immediately move on to weaponizing it and making it into an attack and exploit. And very striking statistics from this year is that the average time to exploit in the wild before a patch exists is -7 days. So attackers are moving very, very fast. Are we ready for that? Can you move to the next slide, Stacy, please? So these are preliminary results from some research that we did recently, where we looked specifically at traditional tools used in AppSec, in cybersecurity, to assess how secure a code base is. So this research covers 8 code bases from various different languages, from C to PHP, JavaScript, and a lot of sort of well-known, crucial open source projects. And those are projects where we identify real CVEs that were acknowledged by maintainers and fixed. And we ask the question, would traditional tools that are widely used in the industry would they find those vulnerabilities? And if you look at the chart on the left, I mean, the first two bars are for our system. Uh, the most highlighted one, the second one, is fully autonomous system that we use to identify and verify vulnerabilities. Uh, the first one is our system assisting a real-world cybersecurity researcher. So this benchmark is slightly biased because it looks at all the CVEs that we found using our system. But what is striking is that most of the traditional tools don't find almost anything. Uh, Tools like Sneak or Aikido do find slightly above 10% of the CVEs that we found. And when we analyze them deeper to find what types of vulnerabilities do these tools actually find, those are sort of the simpler vulnerabilities, things like SQL injection that you can identify using sort of fairly simple pattern matching. And the vulnerabilities that really do need AI to identify are usually logical vulnerabilities, things that require sort of complicated logic to actually verify the execution and find the vulnerability. Uh, the second part of the chart is showing how much noise do these tools usually create. And the worst offender is SamGrep, which in our benchmark was producing over 5,000 findings to not identify almost any real vulnerabilities. So I think that is really quite striking how AI is not just aiding the attackers, but this is a real proof how it can help defend your system compared to traditional tools that don't use AI or use AI in a fairly sort of limited way.
I think this is really important. So it's not just the false negative issue in terms of obviously missing some of the findings and not being able to find the more difficult types or classes of vulnerabilities, such as business logic flaws or missing authentication and stuff like that, but also the noise problem, that is the false positive problem that has been basically plaguing the entire AppSec space for decades now, leading to this almost like cynicism that we find now with security leaders, which are sitting on backlogs that are in the millions, really unable to navigate because of that sheer volume. And obviously, even if they know that the majority of those findings are not really relevant or are not really somehow important for them, still navigating that is extremely difficult. So it's not just the findings, but it's also the triage, the proper, let's say, vetting, reachability analysis, exploitability analysis, and of course, last but not least, the actual remediation. That all matters. But as you can see here, even the false negative problem, meaning that the important things are actually missed, is really prevalent across the traditional vendors.
So to sum it up, where we are is that AI is becoming more and more capable, and at the same time, our traditional tools are not able to defend the systems that we do need defending. This chart comes from AI Safety Institute, who does evaluations of frontier models and their capabilities in various domains. And they have quite detailed benchmarks for evaluating cybersecurity capabilities of frontier models. So I wanted to give you a bit of a perspective where we are in terms of big models being able to do stuff sort of out of the box. This chart comes from their benchmark, which is simulating a corporate network. It's quite a realistic simulation, and Claude Mythos preview was the first model ever that was able to go through this whole simulation and break the network. Uh, on the x-axis, you have number of tokens spent, and on the y-axis is the average number of steps needed to capture the flag or finish the challenge. And Claude Mythos was the first one to ever do it for them. It spent a lot of tokens, and out of 10 trials, it succeeded only once, but it was capable to do that. So that was a bit of a wake-up call. And if you look at the next slide, 1 month later, OpenAI released GPT 5.5, and surprisingly, it received almost the same results as Mythos. It was also able to finish the challenge, break into the network, finish all the levels, consuming about the same number of tokens, and also succeeded only once out of 10 trials. So I think this is something that's, I think we have all seen Mythos, but this is something that is not talked about that much, that the capability to do cybersecurity, serious cyber attacks is already there across multiple different models. And it's not just Mythos. And now I will hand it over to Tomasz, who can talk a bit more about Mythos and some results around that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Evelina. So I think a lot of you in the audience have noticed the whole story with like Fable 5 and Mythos and their release cycle. On June 9th, they were first announced and released to the public. But only 3 days later, on a Friday afternoon, um, they had to be pulled back because the US Department of Commerce created these very ad hoc export controls, which effectively prevented Anthropic from serving it to anyone because they required them to serve it only to US citizens, which they were not even capable of deciding like who is and who is not a US citizen. So it was an effective ban on the model, which was restored only 2.5 weeks later. In the meantime, the US has set up a government safety review. So when GPT 5.6 was published by OpenAI, it went through a slightly smoother and like slightly shorter cycle, first being previewed to just a few companies, and then recently being published for general public. What we see in this is that people that have started integrating Fable 5 when it was released had their like rug pulled out, pulled under them. So they couldn't like rely on this model being available. It was very, very suddenly made unavailable. And what this signals is that the US government and probably other governments are ready to intervene in what models are and are not available. And they're able and willing to do very fast changes. So if you're relying on any one particular model for whatever you're doing, like cybersecurity, you can see the landscape changing like very fast. So yeah, this could be a pretty big issue. And as the models get more powerful over time, we can expect even more intervention in the future. Stacy, could you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. And so this is not only the frontier models. Here I have the graph from Epoch AI, which tracks like general capability index. They aggregate multiple benchmarks into one number. What is the key point that I want to talk about here is that the open models, the open weight models, mostly Chinese, but also from other countries, are lagging the frontier only by around, say, 4 months. Maybe it's 6 months, but not more than that. So whatever capability was available in the frontier models is also available very soon to everyone. This has two effects. One is positive, like even if, for now, even if the frontier models get pulled away, we can for now rely on open weight models. But it also has the shadow side where everyone that is on the attacker side can also use these open models without any guardrails to attack and like create exploits and discover vulnerabilities as well. We will see how this evolves in the future. As these open weight models get more powerful, maybe they will also start being restricted. Importantly, what we see is that whatever model we start with in IL, we can get it much faster on the specific narrow capabilities. So when we are talking about cybersecurity, we can get ahead of maybe like 6 or 12 months. We can get like a generational uplift by building the right system that leverages the models well. So if we start with the open weight models, we can get further ahead on top of the frontier models, but we can also plug in the frontier models and get even like a further uplift. Yeah, I think we can move on. So what we have seen recently, we actually discovered this, I think, kind of by accident, that there is this new initiative from UC Berkeley tracking vulnerabilities that these different teams have discovered. And we see that we were very pleasantly surprised that we are leading on 3 out of these 8 categories, ahead of every frontier lab, Google, which had an older project discovering vulnerabilities, and Anthropic too. On the critical count, we are kind of like tying with Anthropic every few days, kind of like one or the other is leading. We have more in the pipeline, so probably this will be again changing in the next few days. Importantly, we see that we are also having like much broader coverage. So the types of vulnerabilities that we discover is much larger. And we also are leading on the volume of vulnerabilities. For a small company with a small budget that we can dedicate to looking at open source, this seems like a really big success and validation that actually whatever we are doing with the models is much more effective than just like throwing big model and looking at code bases.
Yeah, I think this is a very sort of real verification of the thesis that you don't need Mythos or you don't need a top-tier autonomous frontier model to find vulnerabilities in code. Because we can all look at various marketing materials, but this is real data from the wild.
Yes, these are actual vulnerabilities confirmed by the open source maintainers that got assigned an identifier and got published publicly. So this is the best validation for us. And we can see this validation already from last year. So OpenSSL, which probably everyone knows, widely used cryptographic library that a lot of people rely on. Lots of effort and energy was invested in the past by human researchers looking at the code base, doing fuzzing, and still there is like many vulnerabilities that they missed. And we've been finding these vulnerabilities already since last summer. So in the September release, 3 out of the 4 discoveries were done by us. We discovered all 12 out of the 12 in January and a lot more others in April. And you can see that Anthropic only starts showing up in April of this year. And Mythos, as you know, is just from this year. While we've been able to do this work a long time ago with models that are at this time already 1 year old. And if you build the right system, you can indeed like get this great performance even out of these 1 year old models, which can then find like real vulnerabilities that have been in the code base for many years and were missed by all this fuzzing and research time that was spent on this repository. Okay. Then another good example is curl. So in curl, there's this great blog post from Daniel Stenberg, who is the main maintainer of curl. I mean, curl is running on 20 billion devices in the world, so like very widely used library. So someone used Mythos to scan curl and sent Daniel a report with five findings. Out of these 5 findings, apparently only 1 was a confirmed CVE, 1 was classified as being just a bug, and 3 were actually false positives. It's nice that something was found, but this was slightly underwhelming, considering this was coming from Mythos, which at this time had this like aura of like being a mythical, really model with special capabilities. So we decided to take another look and use the latest IL system and scan curl again. So we were scanning it in the past, even before Mythos, and we already had like 4, I think, CVs in there. But we thought, okay, let's take another look. And out of these, another look, we've got 6 confirmed CVEs, 12 findings that were deemed just a bug, but like there was some discussion. You can actually read all of these discussions on the HackerOne. Curl publishes them, so we can see how we are communicating with the maintainers, what we reported. So some of these just a bug, where there was some back and forth whether like it's a low severity vulnerability or just a bug, or I think there was one finding where it was not even in the release version. So we found something that didn't even get, because it was patched, it didn't even get into release, and therefore it didn't have a CVE. Okay, we can move on. So the most important point that we are trying to make is that if you have a frontier model, it is a useful engine, but the system that you build around it actually harnesses that engine into an effective vehicle. It's good to have a powerful engine. You can build a faster car, but like if you just strap it to like a piece of wood with some wheels, it's not really like the best way how to leverage it. You can get something much better if you build a system specifically for the purpose that you are trying to get. So of course, anyone can now go and like prompt an LLM and use, I mean, some simple harness like Claude Code or Codex, and it will go into the code base and it might even find some bugs, might maybe even find a vulnerability. But this is far not like enough of what you want to do. You're not sure whether it like looked in the whole code base. You're not sure if it actually looked at all the security relevant parts. You don't know how much time or token it will spend when you just like send it off like this. Um, it doesn't have more context unless you start like teaching it. It doesn't learn over time unless you build some memory system. And it's like a static view of the code as well. Like once the repository changes, it doesn't help you with doing kind of like updating whatever you found. If you build a more sophisticated system, what you can do is you can have orchestration like the IL system does, which will guarantee that for sure we see all the security relevant parts of the code base. We can see we can also absorb organizational memory, so both explicitly named by the user and also just through interaction with IL, we can learn about what are the more severe or less severe findings. And very importantly, we can provide this continuous protection. This doesn't just come out of box from like any agent. You need to do some pretty sophisticated engineering to be able to see, oh, if some code changed, did it close any of our past issues so that now we don't have to worry about them? You also can scan like any changes to the main code base efficiently. So anytime a new vulnerability is introduced, we can know about it immediately. We can also see bugs even before they are merged into the code base because we can scan every pull request the developer makes and we can alert them that, oh, actually, there is some issue and they can address it right away. Not being tied to any particular model also helps us mix different models. So as new models come out, we can use the latest models, or we can use a combination of models. We can use certain fine-tuned models, and each model for their own task that they perform best. So we can get the best performance for cost. And by leveraging multiple ones, we can also get further than just by using any single one.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
here it's important to sort of realize that all the frontier AI labs are trying to optimize the big models to be good at everything to a certain extent. But with added focus and with a specific task in mind, it's possible to get better performance with a targeted system. So this is the ultimate sort of the model versus the harness. If you just want to have a chatbot that you can use to, I don't know, buy shoes as well as fix some bug in code, okay, you use a frontier model. But if you want to be serious about finding vulnerabilities in the code, you need a good harness.
Okay, well, we're about to go to the Q&A, but before we do that, I would be remiss if I didn't allow Andre a little bit of time to talk about ISLE and who we are as a whole. So let's segue into that, and Andre, you can take it going forward.
Thank you, Stacy and team. By now you probably understand that we have done a lot of work sort of building the actual core of the product and have worked a lot with open source to kind of validate it. We are big believers in open source and will continue supporting open source maintainers, especially the kind of most critical ones, as much as we can. At the same time, we produce software that can be used by commercial entities and on closed source repositories. That's the flagship product that we have. And it really kind of leverages the same engine that Evelina and Tomáš have been talking about already. At the beginning, it is the discover phase in which we are able to find these novel vulnerabilities across a wide spectrum of types and classes, much further and wider than traditional SAST, but also significantly broader than kind of AI-based tools, as you can see in the Berkeley leaderboard. Then we go into the triage phase, where we actually are able to take into account all the contextual information, and by doing that, basically minimize the noise. We spoke about the plague of false positives and basically people having to deal with stuff that is unimportant or not really relevant for their use cases. So in our IL system, we take great care at minimizing that noise through the triage phase. And then last but not least, of course, there is the remediation step, which in our case is not just about proposing a code patch, meaning the AI somehow come up with a code snippet that supposedly solves the problem, but we go all the way into verification, which basically means compiling the source code, running it through a bunch of tests that would not only prove that the vulnerability is indeed solved, but also that it doesn't break anything else. And only by the time that all these things pass, a human is involved in the loop. So for us, it's really about industrializing or bringing scale to the whole loop from discovery to triage to remediation, so that you can actually sort of deal with the volume of vulnerabilities that is probably still coming and that we'll have to somehow get through in the upcoming years, given the capabilities of the models also on the offensive side, as Evelina pointed to, that is the models being weaponized by adversaries. And last but not least, it's not just about legacy code bases or existing code that companies are sitting on, but it's also about new code that's being written. Tomáš already mentioned some of these features, but the IL system allows you to basically synchronously hook into the developer workflow through basically GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket agents that would check and somehow instruct in case of agentic coding the flow so that it does not allow any vulnerabilities to land in the main repository. So all of this work is done basically before the merge is done. So all these three things working in concert, the discovery phase, the remediation, verification phase, but also the continuous protection, which basically hooks into the developer workflow, I think are really important and are the cornerstones of the IL product. If we go to the next one. The other thing that we somehow slightly touched upon but didn't really articulate directly is that unlike most other AI-based systems that deal with application security, IL was designed to actually be able to run in any kind of environment. That is, the deployment models are very broad, ranging from traditional SaaS running in the cloud, in any of the hyperscaler clouds, to private cloud. So for organizations that have built or invested in their own private cloud infrastructure, be it like real kind of open source, open stack based, or something bespoke built from Azure or AWS or GCP. All the way to on-prem, that is kind of the more traditional data center work. And in some cases, even air-gapped. So for obviously more sensitive environments, such as defense or others, where the connectivity to the internet may be limited for various reasons, we are able to deploy our models if sufficient hardware is available, even in those cases. Now, of course, there is always going to be some trade-offs between these deployment scenarios. That is, the more, let's say, richer the harness can be, and the broader the ensemble of the models that we use can be, probably the results are going to be more higher fidelity. But at the same time, compared to the other options that are available, especially for the air-gapped or on-premise deployment models, we believe that Isle is leading the pack in terms of the capability that it can deliver to really help AppSec move to the next level. Stacy? Yeah, and last but not least, we just recently launched a new product that's like an entry-level product that we called Isle Snapshot, that basically allows a very easy audit of what we would say Mythos readiness of the entire code base. So the idea is that even in like the private or air-gapped scenarios, we were able to basically in a week or two do a full security audit, find all the relevant vulnerabilities, report on them as they would be potentially found by the adversaries using a Mythos class model, and then go from there. So this is like a entry-level product for us, or entry door product that is super easy to deploy, can be onboarded in a matter of days, and can get you started. So really recommend to look into this.
Awesome. Thanks, Andre.
So can I just jump in?
Yeah,
We like to
absolutely.
say that we have Mythos at home in a slightly self-deprecating way, because it's not something you can chat with, and not something that will help you program your code. But we do have the same capability that we can deploy in various sorts of environments.
Awesome. Thank you, Evelina. One last slide here. We hope to see you at Black Hat or DEF CON this August in just a few short weeks in Las Vegas. We will have our special cabana at the Mandalay Bay West Lagoon and hope to meet you there. Our founders will be on site for both Black Hat and DEF CON, and would love to meet you and talk and shake your hand. And that's Andre Jaya Baloo and Stan Fort. So hope to see you there. We also are co-sponsoring a party with PhoneCheck on Wednesday the 5th. So if you'd love invite to that, because it is invite only, just let us know. All right, we're going to open up the Q&A, and I'm opening up the questions here to see what we've got so far. We have a question here. Is Isle available to African countries?
Yeah, in general, there is no restriction. Obviously, besides the countries that are under, few countries in the world that are under embargo, there is no restriction. So yes.
Awesome. Okay. Let me see here. Could you please expand on the role of the harness versus model and provide a few examples? Who'd like to?
I will start, and please do jump in, Tomashi. So the model task is basically all the frontier AI labs are creating very powerful models that can do everything in some sense. So they can only be optimized for to a certain level, because once you train a model for some specific task, it loses its capabilities in other areas. So, for example, Mythos was very much optimized for coding and understanding code, and some of the cyber safety capabilities came out of that. But with the right harness that provides maybe better context engineering, all the information that is needed from, let's say, the environment where the code runs, and specific targeting, then you can get pretty good performance or outperform even the frontier models by themselves. And Tomasz went through some examples where we scanned a repo after it was seen by Mythos, and we were getting better results. But even the results that Anthropic published about Mythos are, I think the naive view is that they just pointed Mythos at a repository and said, find vulnerabilities. But if you go deeper into the technical reports, they actually had Opus model chunking the repository into smaller pieces, giving it context and saying like, focus on this, is there a vulnerability in this small piece of code? So even Anthropic was providing some sort of harness or scaffold to Mythos to be actually able to find vulnerabilities. So our statement is that with the right harness, even less capable models can be focused on specific tasks and outperform big generalist models out of the box. And we even do have one small open source example where Stan put together a nano analyzer, and it's very much targeted towards C++ code. So it contains descriptions about the sorts of vulnerabilities you find in this sort of code. And it was able to find the same vulnerabilities that Mythos found. So even with very tiny open source models. So I think
Just also say,
that's a
yeah.
proof.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I would also add that when people hear the word harness, I think they tend to think it's just a relatively simple, let's say, chaining of prompt or relatively simple prompt engineering. Definitely not the case at ISLE. What we call the harness, or I prefer the word system over the word harness. The system that we've built is actually very complex and would include things that are even, go well beyond AI capability. So, for example, if you know something about the traditional tools that offensive security researchers have been using to find new novel vulnerabilities, such as fuzzing, the system that we have built actually kind of uses some of these techniques sort of on the fly, is able to pull up all the various tooling from outside, can do like use AI to generate on the fly fuzzing harnesses, then basically use AI to perhaps propose the right data to seed the harness or the fuzzing algorithms, but then the fuzzing runs on CPU somewhere else, and then producing some result that can then again processed by AI models. But the whole thing is like pretty complicated and like definitely not a linear or synchronous chain of prompts that you may think when you hear the word harness.
Yeah, I might also follow up on that. Like there's like tens of different types of agents that are like coordinated in different ways. It's like a swarm that like asynchronously does like many different things. So it's kind of like pretty hard to track actually like all the things that are happening. So yeah, and I wanted to maybe that also kind of touches on this other question, which is asking about comparing Mythos versus ISLE, like the costs. So the way they actually use it, as they report in their blog post, they would invoke Mythos for like every single file in the repository, which then goes like agentically. And if you consider the cost of that, like given Mythos pricing of $25 per million input tokens, 125 output, if I remember correctly, like they're spending a lot and lots of tokens in a very like naive way. While if you have a system that is like optimized for vulnerability discovery, you can like hand off different tasks to different models and move like much more efficiently through the code base. And it's really not possible to do like a very naive like apples to apples comparison, because every time you're running Mythos, you're running it in some sort of a harness. So even if they claim there is no harness, like there is actually one. Like it's actually Claude code prompted in a certain type of way.
Great. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Tomasz. How long do you believe the cybersecurity capabilities of models will keep growing linearly?
Maybe I can try addressing this. So I still believe that there will be like, I believe they will be increasing in capability over time and still next at least a year. The real question I think is like how shallow or deep vulnerabilities are. So whether we will be getting to a point where like any model, like even like very small models, can find like all the vulnerabilities in code, or whether we will just keep getting like finding like more and more sophisticated vulnerabilities as the models get better. Um, so whether there is like what is the floor and what is the ceiling? Maybe I would like frame the question like that.
It's a good point.
And I think right now we are in a quite a unique period in history where there is a lot of low-hanging fruits in terms of finding vulnerabilities. And right now it's time to get rid of the easy to find vulnerabilities, because if you don't fix them and patch them, then someone else will find them and exploit them. And it's literally like stepping stones, and you have to fix enough of them not to give the attackers enough sort of leverage to get into your system. And right now, there is just a lot of them. So that's why you see so much publicity around finding vulnerabilities. And I think the rate of finding vulnerabilities, if you see any of the research coming out of, let's say, Mozilla, is increasing. So now is the time.
Maybe one more point to that, like, so there's two things. Like one is like all of these like tech debt that we have as a civilization accumulated in the open source software and like paying off some of that. And the other issue is now like increased use of AI agents that generate like massive amounts of new code. And how do we like deal with that? How do we deal with like all these new vulnerabilities that are introduced? And like if we can deal with them automatically and in a fast way, that also like allows us to move faster to create new software that we know that is like secure kind of from the beginning, and it's like not introducing new issues.
Awesome. All right, well, we have time for one more question. Tomasz, I know you're looking through the questions. Andre, do you want to pick one and answer it? Or Evelina?
I'll just jump in. There is some question on if we are actually fine-tuning our models or just using skills and harnesses. We do use everything. We do fine-tune our own models as well as all the other steps.
There
Okay.
was also a question about, like, I'll read it loud. How would you compare the costs of running Mythos versus IL solving the same set of problems? So for the specific set of problems that IL has been built for and optimized, based on all the available data that we have, I would say IL is at least 10 times less expensive. That is, it's able, the density of, the findings or the output is, I guess, 10 times, at least 10 times larger per dollar spent. And that's also not taken into account that by definition, the IL product actually like a perpetual protection that you can run over time, and that protects your code base versus Mythos, which fundamentally, if you do the prompt, it's a one-shot type of thing, and then that's the cost I'm talking about. If you were to do that in a perpendicular in a kind of continuous way, then it would likely be much more expensive still. So the cost question here is absolutely obvious that there is benefits to using IL over Mythos. And yeah, that's because we are able to somehow route the particular tasks to less expensive models, to orchestrate the whole system in a very economical way.
I can also add that we do have anecdotal data from analyses that were published by Anthropic. They sometimes do report the cost of running the system on a specific code base that we did analyze as well, and did find vulnerabilities there as well. So we also have like direct cost comparisons.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up the Q&A. Any questions we did not get to, we do have saved and will respond to you individually. Just want to say thank you to our guests today who attended this webinar, as well as our panelists, Andre, Tomasz, and Evelina. Thank you so much to everyone. And we will be sending this recording and webinar deck out to you in the next few days. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.